Welcome to Inspiration and Transformation from the Banks of the Ganga with Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati, an American sannyasi living at the Parmarth Niketan Ashram in Rishikesh, India. Sadhvi is president of the Divine Shakti Foundation, a charitable organization bringing education, vocational training, upliftment, and empowerment programs to women and children. Sadhvi is also Secretary General of the Global Interfaith Wash Alliance and Director of the world-famous International Yoga Festival. Join the musings of an American sannyasi as Sadhvi shares the wisdom and teachings of her guru, His Holiness Pujya Swami Chidanand Saraswatiji.
Welcome everyone to Inspiration and Transformation from the holy banks of the sacred Ganga River in the land of Rishikesh, India. Non-attachment. Well, the Sanskrit of that is Vairagya. Now, when we think about not being attached, in English, if two things are attached, my fingers are attached, or we could say these pieces of paper are attached. In order to not be attached, I have unattached them. A synonym of that is connection, right? Here they are connected. When I have unattached them, I have essentially disconnected them. Disconnection is not what Vairagya means. And the way that you know that, again, not from a Sanskrit grammar way, because that is not my forte, but just from the depth of the meaning. If you look at the enlightened masters, you look at the stories of Bhagwan Krishna, Bhagwan Ram, so you look at all of the examples that we have in human form of how we are supposed to be the embodiments of these highest spiritual virtues. None of them lives in a way that you would describe as disconnected or indifferent. Uncaring, really? They're the opposite of that. Every enlightened master I have been blessed to be in their presence of is the most connected, present, compassionate, caring being I've ever been blessed to be in the presence of. They're the exact opposite of the words we typically hear. Non-attachment, disconnection, indifference, aloof. These are not words of actual virtue when you look at them from the English. What Vairagya means, and I have to admit, I came upon this awareness just by divine providence. I was sitting listening to a lecture, a katha of the beautiful scriptures and beautiful stories. And in this, the speaker was talking about bhakti, not as the virtue of devotion, but actually as the embodied being, as the woman of bhakti, who was actually a being in the Puranas. And bhakti had two sons, Gyan and Vairagya. Now, bhakti is juicy devotion. It's not dry love. It's not the, do you love me? Of course I love you. Why do you need to hear me say I love you? Of course, would I be here if I didn't love you? It's not that. It's juicy love, juicy devotion. We talk about the ras of bhakti. Ras is like the liquid, the juice, the essence, the gravy, right? Now, how can juicy devotion give birth to dry disconnection, detachment? He wasn't adopted. Now, what I realized in that moment when I heard the story was, so to have vairagya, you need bhakti. You can't have the son without the mother, which also interestingly means, on a different subject, to have gyan, you need bhakti. That they're not nearly as separate paths as some of us think. First, we are in juicy love of God, devotion to God. The more filled we can be with bhakti, the more automatically our attachment to the little things of this world dissipates. It's the most natural thing on earth. It's not a harsh disconnection. I've come to think of it not as detachment, but as reattachment. So currently we are attached to the little things in the world. My possessions, my this, my that, my respect, my ajit, how people talk to me, whether they do what I want. All of these little things. This is what we're stuck with. We reattach ourselves to God through devotion, through bhakti. And vairagya, detachment, is the natural offspring of that. Because if you are truly immersed in love of God, somebody putting a nasty comment on something you posted online really is not going to impact you. You're not going to find yourself in a Twitter war with someone over some rude comment that they did. When you're just swimming in love of God, you're not going to be worried about rushing to the 24 hours left of the sale that ends tomorrow and honking your horn to get everybody out of the way because you've got to get there to buy the stuff before the sale ends. When you're in juicy love of God. So that attachment to the things, it dissipates automatically. So vairagya is that natural detachment from the stuff that plagues most of us through being reattached to the divine. And indifference, I'll come to renunciation last, indifference. Again, the English of indifference, this is not a virtue we should look for. It means I really couldn't care less. I'm totally indifferent. Doesn't matter. Now, indifference is a quality, again, of disconnection. We are not meant to be disconnected from the world. What we are meant to be is not attached to the dichotomies. So in the Bhagavad Gita, when Bhagwan Krishna is speaking about how to recognize the yogi, the wise one, he says it is one who is not affected, impacted by pleasure, pain, gain, loss, success, failure. So this is the indifference. I shouldn't be impacted in a way like the waves of the ocean where I'm just going up and down. Gains come, I'm up. Losses, I'm down. Pleasures, I'm up. Pains, I'm down. What I want happens, I'm up. It doesn't, I'm down. I should be balanced, exactly. Equanimity. would be my word of choice rather than indifference. It's not that I don't care. It's that I am balanced in all of them. I'm able to be the same, anchored, grounded, connected, regardless of whether we go for Chinese food or Mexican food. It's not going to impact me. Sure, wherever you want to go, we go, because I'm not going to be impacted by that. It's just something that sustains my body. I get a beautiful comment on social media, it's not going to make my night. I get a nasty comment, it's not going to ruin my night. I'm not even going to read them. I'm not going to pay attention to them. Because I'm balanced. I'm not hooked into the ups and downs on the waves. So that's this holy indifference. I would use the word equanimity instead. And then lastly, renunciation. So when you think about sannyas, as you mentioned, it's a very specific monastic renunciation of very specific things. Sex, sensual pleasures, ownership, family connections in the way that they hinder our spiritual progress, in the way that that attachment would thwart us from moving forward. But the truth is that none of those things which we renounce are actually the things that would keep you from being enlightened or awakened. We renounce them in sannyas because it's a particular dharma, a monastic dharma. Some of us have the dharma to be monastic renunciants. Many people don't. There's no sense of a better dharma or a worse dharma, that somehow sannyas is better than grihast dharma. Ultimately, anyway, according to the Indian tradition, everybody eventually, in the last phase of their life, enters the sannyas ashram phase. But when you think about renunciation, the part that's more important, unless you're planning to be a sannyasi, unless you're actually thinking right now of taking monastic vows, what's much more important than renouncing those things is renouncing the stuff that does actually keep you from being enlightened or awakened or even in peace, in joy, in love, which is the games of the mind. Jealousy, anger, grudges, judgment, negativity, false identification. You can give up sex, you can give up your family, you can give up ownership, and you can still be miserable in a mind that is full of anger and grudges, judgment, false identification. There's no guarantee whatsoever that renouncing the things that we renounce when we become sannyasis is going to suddenly automatically grant you, forget enlightenment, even peace and joy and freedom. You have to work with the mind whatever path of life you take. Whether you are in a householder path of life, whether you're in a monastic path of life, the mind is the mind. And you've got to work with it. And ultimately, the renunciation that really matters is a renunciation of the stuff that holds us back. A renunciation of our grudges, of our pains, of our anger, of our false self, our ego, our ignorance. That's the stuff to work with first. Because otherwise, if you haven't worked with that yet and you become a sannyasi, then the fact that you are, no longer having sex, no longer having sensual pleasures, no longer with your family, then it just becomes something else to be angry about. Then it just becomes something else to have a grudge about. Something else to be judgmental and negative about. Something else to have a sense of false self about. I am better than you because I am a sannyasi. So the renunciation that matters is a renunciation of the games of the mind. That's what keeps us from freedom. And so that's the renunciation to work with. And then as your life path unfolds, as you start to get into the later years of your life, or earlier if you decide to take to this path sooner, you go into it with a full, grounded mind. Sannyasa is not running away from something. It's opening to something. But you can only open to something when you've stopped running away. And as long as my mind is killing me with all of the games it's playing, I can't actually open to sannyas. So start your own practice of renunciation right now. Of what are you going to renounce? Choose a different thing once a week, once a month, whatever you think you can handle. But choose a set time frame. That, all right, for the month of October, I'm going to renounce my grudges. Not deny them or repress them or suppress them. Pretend they don't exist. Eat or drink or shop my way through them. But actually work with them so I can let go of them. Actually become free. And then the next month, renounce something else. And if you find it takes you more than a month, that's okay. There's no rush. You're not on anybody else's timeline. But at any given moment, you should be in the active process of renouncing something. And just figure out the first one. What is it that's killing you the most? What is it that's troubling you the most? What is it that impacts your meditation, your yoga, your sleep the most? Work with that first. Then when you find that you've gotten a little bit of freedom and spaciousness from that, bring in something new. That's the renunciation we need.
You're listening to OTR-FM, part of the IOM radio network.
Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single
Circle of Hearts Radio is a sanctuary on the airwaves, Join me, Grandmother Alaya, in the circle on Sunday 2 p.m. Eastern as I share information to both enlighten and nourish your soul.
Hi, this is Christina Ricci with RAIN. Every 2 minutes, another American is sexually assaulted. If you or someone you know has been sexually assaulted, you are not alone. Help is just a call or click away through the National Sexual Assault Hotline. Please call 1-800-656-HOPE, that's HOPE, or visit rain.org, that's RAINN.org.
Brought to you by RAIN and this station.
Welcome back to Inspiration and Transformation. I'm so glad to have you all back here with me.
The disease of distraction is not something that was created by social media. It was not created by our devices. If you go back to our scriptures were talking about the monkey mind. Long before we had devices that beeped and blinked and binged and vibrated and whatnot. So distraction is actually a quality of the mind. Our devices have just co-opted that. Social media has just co-opted that. It hasn't created distraction. The people who are creating algorithms on social media are doing so based on how our brains already act. So, yes, number one, there absolutely should be no phone times. Now, there's no equation for that. We've all got different responsibilities, different lives. But what's important is that we give ourselves at least some time, whether it's a certain period of time in a day, whether it's in a week, however we're doing it, but a time in which we are not at the beck and call of anyone who has access to our device or any of our apps or any of our social media accounts. Otherwise, whatever we're doing, let's say you want to be meditating, you want to be reading a book, you want to be having a conversation, you want to be writing something, you want to be working on a project that means something to you and that requires attention. And every 5 seconds your device is going, you're not going to be able to give your attention to it. I've shared before, but our Satsang audience changes, every night. It's worth sharing again. I was reading a study recently of the fact that the average worker in the average workplace is able to work for only 3 minutes at a time before they're distracted. Now, whether it's not always the devices, it could be somebody from the next cubicle leaning over and saying something. But most of the time, it's the phone, it's the email, it's notifications, it's WhatsApp, whatever it may be. 3 minutes. An average of 3 minutes without being interrupted. Now, that's part one of the data. Part two is that in 1 hour of working, in which you are distracted every 3 minutes, your IQ points drop by 10 points in the course of an hour. On average. They've done this research. They take people's IQ at the beginning of the hour. They do it again at the end of the hour. They've got their control groups and whatnot. Those who have been constantly distracted like that, their IQ has dropped by 10 points during the course of the hour. Now, if you did no work at all, and you simply sat at your desk and smoked marijuana, your IQ would drop by 5 points in an hour. Again, they've done the work, they've done the data. Now, what that means is that our current way of working is actually making us stupider than if we simply sat at our desk and got high all day and didn't actually do any work. Now, that's for me, it was a really, really powerful piece of research. As people who have sworn off drugs and alcohol and all forms of, intoxicants, the idea that actually the way that we work is taking away more of my brain than if I actually just sat there and, took drugs. So I share that because we need time, first of all, in which there's no phone at all, just no device at all. But chances are you're not going to be able to give yourself too much of that. And it doesn't have to be an all or nothing situation. The device is also a great tool. It's a help in so many ways. We actually use it. And that's the key. We need to use it rather than it using us. And so some really quick and easy tools are, number one, turn off all your notifications. Nothing should beep or ding on your phone other than an actual phone call. If somebody's actually calling you, let it ring. If you want to go a step beyond that, put it on Do Not Disturb or Focus, where it'll only ring if one of your selected people is calling. It's a fantastic way of having control. You're working, you're reading, you're sleeping, you're meditating. Now, of course, you don't want to miss an emergency call from a loved one, a family member. You're at work. You're working on an important project. You don't want to miss it if your boss calls during the workday. So you're able actually to program it in such a way that either it only makes noise if someone's calling, or it only makes noise if someone you've allocated is calling. But just stop all of the rest of the notifications. Yes, we get messages, text messages, WhatsApp messages, but my feeling always is, if it's an emergency, they'll call. I cannot even imagine someone saying, well, I got into this horrible car accident. I was bleeding along the side of the road. I texted you, you didn't answer, so I died. You'd call. You'd call. If it's an emergency, they're going to call you. If it's something super urgent, people will pick up the phone and make a call. Look at your messages on your schedule, not on someone else's. Not they've sent it, so you must look immediately. Set up a schedule. Depending on your role, your work, maybe it's once an hour. Maybe it's twice a day. Whatever it may be, but set up something so that you're in control, not the device in control. And as far as social media, for God's sakes, do not have it give you any kind of notifications with noise or without noise. If you want to go on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, go on it on your own time. See what you want to see. But do not have your phone be sending you things with every post, like, comment, share. It's literally handing over your life, your freedom, on the altar of someone else's financially based algorithms. I mean, they've designed this with one thing and one thing in mind only, which is grab your attention. If I know someone's got such a nefarious motivation, why in the world would I hand over my attention? They're clearly not looking out for our best interest. We know it's all about business. So stop letting them run how you think, what you do. Nothing wrong with social media. Just go on it on your own term, on your own time. See what you want to see. There's no reason to get these notifications. And then what you'll find slowly is the device becomes a tool in your hands rather than vice versa. Otherwise, we literally become slaves. As I always say, slaves to an algorithm. Somebody's written it. They've studied neurology. They've studied psychology. They've studied human behavior. And they've written code that hijacks the very habitual nature of us as humans for their own benefit. Don't give it to them. Just in the same way that we see so many advertisements for things, but we don't buy them. We understand it's just an ad. It's not really true. Just by smoking Marlboro cigarettes, I'm not going to be the Marlboro man. I'm not going to, be riding my horse out into the sunset on this deserted, beautiful pasture. No, cigarettes don't bring freedom. We know that. They bring illness and death. So we don't buy them, regardless of the advertisements. But the devices in social media and media has become the same. It's just selling us something by hijacking our minds. So reclaim your mind. If you're going to work with your thoughts, as Puja Swamiji was speaking about in the Arati tonight, well, first you've got to work with the mind in general. You've only got access to your thoughts when you can be aware of them. Most of us don't even have access to our thoughts because we're so busy simply reacting. Stimulus, response, stimulus, response. Take back the working of your mind so that you can take back your awareness, take back your focus. There's nothing that is worthy of achievement in life. From enlightenment, to playing the piano, to writing a book, to having a nap, to anything that can be done in bursts of 3 minutes in between interruptions. That which is worth having in life and doing and achieving in life requires us to be able to be present with it. So take back your life. It's a tool. It's got an on-off button. It's got a volume button. It's got all sorts of notification options. Use them. Let us be the ones in charge. And you'll see your entire nervous system, your entire mind will let out a very big When there's just a little bit of space in your mind.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM radio network.
OMTimes magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Do you have time to read that inspiring book or that blog post you've been meaning to get to? In your busy world, how do you improve yourself and keep your life going? I'm Lisa Kay, and my Between Heaven and Earth radio show can transform your life just by listening. Be uplifted with inspiring topics, positive stories, and ideas that really work. Between Heaven and Earth radio is conscious living for your soul, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Like Baldwin with People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. I grew up loving circuses and other traveling animal shows, but it never occurred to me what life might be like for the animals. Training wild animals to do things they don't understand takes force. Routine discipline with a hook or whip with the heel of a boot shows the animal exactly who's the boss. Don't patronize animal acts. Please contact People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals.
757-622-PETA.
Welcome back. This is Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati with inspiration and transformation.
First of all, realize that fear in and of itself is not bad. We are here because our ancestors were afraid. We are the descendants of those who feared. Imagine that you go back a few hundred years, a few thousand years, and you've got our ancestors, and they're sitting around doing whatever our ancestors did in that particular era, whichever one you choose. And suddenly, the earth starts to thump. And they know that it's a herd of wild elephants, or a tiger, or a lion, or whatever it was that was the animal to be afraid of in that place at that time. Well, there's two groups. One group has a fear response. We call it the fight or flight nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system. It sends all of the blood from inside our being to our arms, to our legs, to get us ready to fight or to flee. Those are the people who ran away, or who brought out their bows and arrows or whatever they used. And then there's the people who didn't have the fear response. And they said, dekhte, let's see, no problem. They didn't make it through that night. They did not procreate. They did not have offspring. The ones who ran, or who got out the bow and arrow, who were afraid and hence prepared, are the ones who lived long enough to procreate and have offspring. We are the descendants of those who were smart enough to be afraid. So fear is not your enemy when it's a fear of that which keeps us alive. The dilemma has become in recent years that instead of being afraid of that which actually is dangerous to our life, heights, deep water, wild animals, we've become afraid much more of ego death than physical body death. So we are afraid of being embarrassed. Oh my God, I couldn't do that. I would just die of embarrassment. What if people laugh at me? What if I try and I fail? It'll be humiliating. That's the stuff now that sends our heart racing, makes our palms sweaty. We start to have these sympathetic nervous system responses. The number one fear people have is public speaking, which is really interesting because nobody ever died giving a bad speech. Right? I mean, let's say your worst fear comes true and it's horrible. You make a complete fool of yourself. Well, nobody ever died from that. But the number one fear, more than fire, water, heights, elephants, tigers, is public speaking. We are afraid of ego death. We're afraid of what if people don't see me, appreciate me, acknowledge me, respect me. Because then on a deep level, I will feel like I don't exist. As long as I need the appreciation, the acknowledgement, the love of those around me, whether it's friends and colleagues, whether it's an online following, as long as I need that to feel like I exist, then yeah, I'm going to be afraid. What if this one's angry at me? What if I say the wrong thing? What if I fail and they know that I'm a failure? We get afraid to start things, to take risks. Oh my God, what if it doesn't work? I'll be so embarrassed. I'll die. This is the fear we need to overcome. Don't stop being afraid of elephants and tigers and storms in the ocean if you're on a little rowboat. But we need to overcome that fear of ego death. And the only way to do it, number one, it's a multi-step thing. Phase one, realize you're not the ego. Realize that you're not it. It could die. You could be humiliated. You could make a fool of yourself. Everyone could laugh. But you wouldn't actually cease to exist. You're not the ego. And so do that spiritual work when we watch our thoughts, we watch our emotions, we watch the rise of the ego. It's the practice of mindfulness. Not just while we're meditating, but in our day. And you'll notice it if you start to become aware. Seemingly out of the blue, your heart is racing, you're all kind of flustered and bothered. And you realize it's because suddenly you're worried. What are you going to say? What is somebody going to think? Can you take this risk? And just become aware of it. And realize you are not that ego which is afraid. And the second step is to actually start taking risks. Show yourself. Do things you're afraid of. Fear of public speaking? Get up and do it. I'm not saying it's going to be a fantastic success. You may discover that you've got a brand new calling that you had no idea about, but you may not. You may literally freeze in the middle of your sentence. But what you're going to learn is you don't cease to exist. There you are, in the middle of forgetting your lines, the middle of public embarrassment. But there you are. You have not ceased to exist. So really start to actually take some risks. I don't mean silly, stupid things, but But ask yourself, what is it I'm not doing? Because I'm worried that it might not work. I'm worried that it might fail. I'm worried that I might look like a fool. I'm worried that people might think I'm a fool. And just do it. If it works, beautiful. If it doesn't work, you will learn that, you know what? You can do things that don't work, and you don't cease to exist. The universe does not open up to suck you out because you no longer deserve your place on planet Earth. But we spend our lives in fear. And instead we are supposed to really step up to the plate of our life and realize we're here to experience divinity. We are here to channel the divine flow. And so what other people think really stops being the issue. So many lives are ruined by worrying ki samne wale kya sochega. Log kya kahenge? What are people going to say? What are they going to think? We ruin our lives. So move forward even in the face of the fear. And what you'll find is slowly the fear stops. It only has a hold on you as long as you listen to it. But the minute you say, I'm afraid, but I'm doing it anyway, you'll develop a whole new habit. And it's one that's going to really strengthen you inside. And lastly, realize that unknown that you're jumping into is the arms of the divine. My favorite way of thinking about this is we do these trust falls in, you do them in school, you do them in corporate team building programs, where you stand with someone. Could be a stranger, could be an enemy, a competitor. And you fall back in their arms. Now, even if that person is an enemy, you know they're not going to let me fall and crack my head open and die. You fall back. And if we can have that faith in an enemy, in a stranger, can't we have that faith in the divine? Will trust fall into the arms of an enemy or a stranger, but not into God? Not into the universe? So trust fall into the arms of the divine, knowing that you have no idea where you're going to land, but you trust the arms you're falling into. And that's the greatest antidote to fear, is faith. Doesn't mean that what we want happens. Doesn't mean the universe is a vending machine and it's going to give us everything we ask for. But it means we're being held and caught in the hands of God. So there's nowhere to fall, really.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM radio network.
OMTimes magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Do you have time to read that inspiring book or that blog post you've been meaning to get to? In your busy world, how do you improve yourself and keep your life going? I'm Lisa Kay, and my Between Heaven and Earth radio show can transform your life just by listening. Be uplifted with inspiring topics, positive stories, and ideas that really work. Between Heaven and Earth Radio is conscious living for your soul, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Like Baldwin with People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. I grew up loving circuses and other traveling animal shows, but it never occurred to me what life might be like for the animals. Training wild animals to do things they don't understand takes force. Routine discipline with a hook or whip with the heel of a boot shows the animal exactly who's the boss. Don't patronize animal acts. Please contact People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals.
757-622-PETA.
Welcome back. This is Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati with inspiration and transformation.
Screens are very nice as last resorts. COVID happens, we can't meet our loved ones. Thankfully, we have FaceTime or WhatsApp video or Zoom or whatever. But anyone who thinks that it's just as nice to FaceTime with someone as to actually sit with them doesn't have a very deep relationship with that person. Screens are great for getting work done. So one of the benefits of COVID, one of the positive outcomes is a lot fewer people are traveling or commuting for work. It's better for people's health, it's better for our environment, less traffic, less carbon emissions. People have more time because they're not spending 3 hours a day commuting. This work from home is fantastic because it's work. But I mean, could you imagine that you're living in a house with your loved ones, but you decide nobody's ever going to leave their bedroom and we're just going to like FaceTime with each other, right? And we'll each get our meals and we'll go and we'll sit in our respective rooms and we'll FaceTime while each of us in our own rooms. Well, clearly, in, I would imagine, a few hours, but certainly within a few days, you're dying for actual connection. You're dying to actually be in each other's presence. It's what led to so many people during this time of COVID, even people who were not sick, didn't have financial issues, didn't have logistic issues or health issues, but nonetheless are experiencing this almost post-traumatic stress disorder from the last 2 years. Well, a huge part of that was a lack of connection, a lack of the ability to be in each other's presence. So there's a huge difference. It's not you. It's like saying, I'm watching this video of an air conditioner running. Why am I not feeling cool? Right? Or I'm looking at this picture of a beautiful meal. Why is my stomach still grumbling? Well, you've got to actually eat the meal in person. You've got to actually sit in front of the air conditioner in person. Screens are useless for that. And as far as satsang, I love that we have the possibility of the screens, because as you have been one, we have so many people all over the world who join through these beautiful, very simple devices that allow them who are unable to travel to India or unable to be with us in Rishikesh to at least take 30, 40 minutes out of their day and connect in satsang. But it's nothing like being in person. Of course. Nothing wrong with you. It shows that you're turned on, that you can feel things, so you can tell there is actually an energetic difference. Of course there is.
This brings to a close this hour of inspiration and transformation. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so glad to be together with you all each week, and I look forward to being together again next Thursday, same time, on OMTimes Radio.